By now you should have been able to assemble gratings, assuming this is not your first boat. These little pieces really work great. Um, they simply clip together. You'll need a tweezers, and different than how, again, Crawlercraft suggests you use watered down PVA. I like to line up everything using a square like this, and once I have it in place, I actually use a small amount, a drop of CA to hold the 4 points in, and then assemble them. Put key pieces in, put the CA in so that it's structured, strong, and square, and then afterwards I come with watered down CA, and that would be my suggestion. When it's finished, you'll have a little piece like this, which is the actual grating, which you cut on your table saw, and then using the 45-degree you'll make up the frame. Again, it's real challenging because of the size. I tend to get one that fits. I stick one piece on, cut both 45 degrees, and then work around and eventually fit it in. Sometimes it means we have to redo it a few times, but eventually you'll get it. Just take your time. Don't cut it too short. It's better to cut it slightly long, and you can trim it on a table saw. Another way to do it is to use the pre-arc and sliding table. I have this jig that I made up at 45 degrees, and you can preset the frames, which this preset mark is pretty good. Cut them square, and then you come back and use the jig and the 45 degree and cut the pieces following the same method I explained before, doing one at a time, fitting it onto the frame as you go along, checking, double checking. I think to do this I made 8 frames, so it's not a perfect science, but it still works. Use the square to line up the planks, and then follow that, hold it in place with CA. Keep checking and checking, reusing the square when you're assembling the final pieces. Well, here it is. It came out slightly different. One side is 28.85 millimeters, and the other side is 28.87 millimeters. I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. Now the time has come to build the cannons, because we have to put the 2 cannons in the front deck. And all I'll say to you is that this is not a job for power tools. This is all hand tools and small pin drills. To line up most of these holes, I actually use a pin for the placement of the hole, because the drill can wander. So the pin gives you a starter hole. And then certainly for the front part, for the clamps that hold down the truncheons, I use a very small drill and then go up to the correct size drill afterwards. You also have to remember to put in all the eyes for the ropes to hold the cannon in place, and I tend to flatten the wheels slightly and put put PVA glue to hold the cannon in place so it doesn't move around. We also have to make up the block and tackles. Um, so I normally have a little case with all different size blocks. My suggestion to you is that anytime you have spare time, you start cleaning up the blocks. You will need a very small tweezers to hold the block and a small piece of sandpaper. And you need to round off all the edges to make them clean, shape the top and bottom of the block. And you want to do this when there's time on your hands. You don't really want to do this when you require the block, because you're going to end up not doing it correctly. These the cannons installed in the bow with all the ropes attached, and you'll notice that the flue that I put in comes through the board, and that's what I framed around. I used that to work out the framing, and then the pre-painted boards installed above the deck, and this is the final view of how that job came out. Well, we've finished the front section. Lots of little struggles, particularly struggled with this small frame. I couldn't do it the way it was suggested, 45-degree angles. It was just too small. One day I'm going to find out how to cut a 45-degree on a tiny piece of wood like that. But I'm pretty happy with how it's come out in the end. And so we're going to now move on to the stern, and we'll see you then.